The most powerful weapon in negotiation isn't what you say, it's what you refuse to say. That pause after your offer isn't awkward, it's calculated. That silence after your client makes a demand, it's not contemplation, it's a pressure chamber. Narcissists in boardrooms don't raise their voices, they lower the temperature. They let the silence stretch until you squirm, until you offer more, until you concede without them saying a word. This isn't passive behavior, it's active warfare. And if you don't recognize it, you're already losing. We've all been there. You walk into a negotiation, prepared with data, with numbers, with your best case. You present it. Then comes the silence. The other party doesn't respond. They don't nod. They don't frown. At the ceiling, at a point just over your shoulder, and in that silence, your carefully constructed case starts to crumble. You start doubting yourself. Was that too ambitious? Did I overstate our value? Suddenly, you're talking again, filling the void, offering concessions you never planned to make, all because you couldn't stand the silence. What's happening here is a sophisticated psychological manipulation. Narcissists and dark triad individuals understand that most people have an almost unbearable need to fill conversational gaps. They know that silence creates cognitive dissonance, a state of mental discomfort, where the lack of input creates pressure to restore balance. Church hour. And you, the normal person, you're the one who restores that balance by giving in, by speaking first, by weakening your position. Today we're exposing the dark art of silence as dominance. We'll show you how this tactic works at neurological, psychological, and strategic levels. You'll recognize the patterns in your own negotiations. More importantly, you'll learn counter tactics from elite negotiators, CEOs, diplomats, hostage negotiators, who have mastered the art of silence without breaking under its pressure. This isn't theory. This is what separates deal winners from those who leave value on the table. Or worse, walk away with nothing. To understand how silence weaponizes psychology, we need to look at what actually happens in our brains when conversations stop. Neuropsychologically, silence creates what psychologists call an information gap. Our brains are wired to seek completion, to resolve uncertainty. When someone stops talking mid-conversation, our brains enter a state of low-grade panic. It's the same feeling you get when you can't remember a word, or when you sense someone is angry, but they won't say why. The uncertainty creates cognitive load mental effort that consumes working memory resources. What narcissists and skilled negotiators understand is that this cognitive load isn't neutral. It creates emotional cascades. The longer the silence goes on, the more your brain tries to fill the void with worst-case scenarios. They hate my proposal. I've completely blown this. I need to salvage this somehow. These thoughts aren't rational. They're emotional. But they drive behavior. They make you desperate to end the discomfort. And desperation in negotiations is fatal. They undervalue their position. They accept terms they'd never consider in a calm state. Consider a real-world example from venture capital. The startup founder presents their valuation to an investor. The investor listens, then leans back, says nothing, doesn't take notes, doesn't ask questions, just stares at the founder. After what feels like an eternity, but is really only 30 seconds, the founder starts fidgeting. I mean, obviously we're flexible on that number. We're more interested in finding the right partner than squeezing every dollar out. The investor still doesn't respond. Another 20 seconds pass. The founder continues, "We could even adjust the terms around the vesting schedule if that would help facilitate." By now, the founder has given away 3 major concessions before the investor has spoken a single word about price. The silence did the work. The investor never had to argue or push. The founder dismantled his own position under pressure. This isn't accidental. It's training. Narcissists often grow up in environments where silence is used as punishment or control. They learn early that discomfort can be weaponized. The silent treatment isn't just a relationship tactic. It's a fundamental tool of dominance that they carry into boardrooms and deal negotiations. They understand that most people will do anything to escape the psychological vacuum they create. Most people, not all. Which brings us to the second level of this manipulation, the emotional cascade. Silence doesn't just create cognitive dissonance, it triggers a chain reaction of emotional responses that weaken your negotiating position. The narcissist sits comfortably in their silence. They might feel nothing at all, or they might feel a sense of power. But you're the one experiencing the emotional storm. Let's map this cascade. First comes anxiety. Your heart rate increases. Your palms sweat. You wonder if you said something wrong. This is where most normal people start backpedaling. If that's too high, we could consider the anxiety quickly escalates to self-doubt. Maybe my expectations are unrealistic. Perhaps I don't understand their needs as well as I thought. And from there, it's a short slide to shame. I'm being difficult. I'm being unreasonable. I should be more flexible. This emotional cascade is precisely what the narcissist wants. By the time you hit shame, you're primed to concede. You're not thinking strategically anymore. You're trying to relieve your own discomfort. And in that state, you'll accept terms you'd never consider with a clear head. Consider the classic strategic pause in salary negotiations. You name your number. The hiring manager doesn't respond. They just look at you with a neutral expression. The room gets heavy. You start feeling panicked. That's too high, isn't it? They're probably thinking I'm greedy. Suddenly you're speaking again. I know the range was up to X, but I'm flexible, really. And just like that, you've lowered your anchor without them having to push it all. The emotional cascade works because of what psychologists call the need for cognitive closure. When we're in uncertain situations, we experience discomfort. The stronger the discomfort, the more we seek to resolve the uncertainty, even if that resolution comes at a cost. In negotiation, the cost is usually concessions. Narcissists understand this intimately. They're masters of creating just enough discomfort to make you resolve the uncertainty in their favor. What makes this particularly insidious is that it bypasses our conscious reasoning. You can tell yourself this is just a tactic intellectually, but when the silence stretches and the discomfort mounts, your emotional brain takes over, and your emotional brain cares about ending discomfort, not about winning negotiations. That's why even experienced negotiators can fall prey to this tactic if they're not prepared. The emotion always wins over reason in the moment. So how do elite negotiators counter this? They understand the game at a deeper level. First, they normalize silence. They're comfortable with it. They let conversations breathe. When a narcissist tries to weaponize silence, the elite negotiator doesn't experience it as discomfort. They experience it as silence, just empty space. They've retrained their brain to not fill the void with catastrophic thinking. Consider the legendary diplomat who negotiated the release of hostages. When the captives used silence as pressure, the diplomat would simply sit, perfectly still, no fidgeting, no verbal fillers, just calm presence. After an hour, the captives, unaccustomed to someone who wouldn't break the silence, would start talking. They'd make offers, concessions, all to restore the balance. The diplomat had won without saying a word. In business, this looks like what we call strategic quiet. You make your offer, then you stop. You might take a sip of water. You might look at your notes, but you don't speak. You let the silence hang. If the other party tries to draw you in, you might simply say, "I'm considering your response." And then silence again. You're reframing the silence from a weapon into a thinking tool. Now they're the ones feeling anxious. Now they're the ones who might overconcede. The third level of silence is dominance is strategic. Narcissists don't just use silence to create discomfort. They use it to extract specific concessions. They understand that under pressure, people tend to reveal information. They weaken their anchors. They offer options they'd never consider in a calm state. The silence creates a vacuum, and information flows to fill it. But it's not just any information. It's the information that weakens your position. Think about how this works in practice. A supplier presents terms to a narcissistic buyer. The buyer listens, then says nothing. After a few seconds of uncomfortable silence, the supplier starts elaborating. We could offer expedited shipping if that would help, though there would be an additional fee. The supplier has just revealed flexibility they weren't going to offer. The buyer still says nothing, another pause. Or we could adjust the payment terms to net 60 instead of net 30 if cash flow is a concern. Now the supplier is giving away multiple concessions without the buyer having to negotiate anything. The buyer's silence has extracted value without effort. What's happening here is what behavioral economists call anchoring adjustment under duress. When you're calm, you set an anchor and make small, calculated adjustments. When you're under the pressure of silence, you make larger, unanchored adjustments. You drift toward the other party's position because you're trying to resolve the discomfort. The narcissist knows this. They create the discomfort, then sit back and watch you drift toward their terms. Consider a high-stakes merger negotiation. The acquiring company makes an offer. The target company's CEO responds with silence. The acquirer's team starts getting nervous. Maybe they're not interested? Maybe we should increase our offer. After what feels like an eternity but is really only 45 seconds, the acquirer's CEO speaks. Look, we're very serious about this partnership. If the price is the sticking point, we could potentially go up to X. And just like that, they've increased their offer without the target having to negotiate at all. The silence did the work. The strategic use of silence also exploits what psychologists call the norm of reciprocity. When someone offers you something, concessions, information, attention, you feel a social pressure to reciprocate. Weaponize this by being silent, which feels like withholding attention or engagement. Your brain feels this as a debt. You start offering concessions to balance the interaction. It's a subtle but powerful form of social pressure that bypasses conscious analysis. What's particularly effective about this tactic is that it's deniable. If you call out a narcissist on using silence as pressure, they can always claim they were just thinking or processing what you said. There's no smoking gun. Just uncomfortable silence that somehow always seems to work in their favor. This deniability makes it incredibly insidious because it's hard to confront and even harder to prove. So how do you counter strategic silence? Elite negotiators use several techniques. First, they prepare silence. Before any negotiation, they practice sitting in silence. They get comfortable with the discomfort. They learn to tolerate the cognitive load without giving in to the emotional cascade. This might sound simple, but it's incredibly powerful. When you're not afraid of silence, you can't be manipulated by it. Second, elite negotiators use what we call strategic disclosure. They know that narcissists try to extract information through silence, so they control what information flows. They might say something like, I'm prepared to discuss terms X, Y, and Z. Beyond that, I'd need to consider our broader strategic objectives. Then they stop. They've set boundaries. They've controlled the information flow. They've used silence strategically rather than reactively. Third, elite negotiators reframe the silence. When a narcissist uses silence to create pressure, the elite negotiator might say, I notice we're not responding to each other's points. Perhaps we should take a moment to document where we agree before continuing. This shifts the focus from pressure to problem solving. It turns the weaponized silence into a productive pause. It shows you're not playing the emotional game. Consider how a venture capitalist counters this tactic when founders try to use silence to pressure them on valuation. Instead of filling the void, the VC might say, let me clarify my thinking on this. My concerns are A, B, and C. I need to understand how you address those before we can move forward. Then they stop. They've controlled the agenda. They've set conditions. They use silence strategically rather than reactively. Now the founder is the one who needs to respond, not the VC. Perhaps most importantly, elite negotiators understand that silence isn't just a counter tactic, it's a fundamental tool of power. When you're comfortable with silence, you control the pace of negotiations. You create space for strategic thinking. You allow your counterpart to reveal information under pressure. You make them work for your engagement. This is what separates amateurs from professionals in high-stakes negotiations. Consider the master negotiator who was hired to rescue a failing acquisition. The deal was stalling. The target company was using silence as pressure, making the acquirer increasingly anxious and willing to concede more. The master negotiator came in, met with the target's team, and didn't speak for the first 2 minutes, just sat there. Let the silence hang. The target's team, unaccustomed to someone who wouldn't break the tension, started talking. They revealed their concerns, their priorities, their bottom lines. By the time the negotiator spoke, he knew exactly where to push. The deal closed 2 days later, on the acquirer's terms. The silence had worked, but in his favor. The bottom line is this: silence isn't passive, it's active, it's a weapon. Narcissists and dark-tried individuals in business understand this intimately. They use silence to create discomfort, to trigger emotional cascades, to extract concessions. They know that most people can't stand the void and will do anything to fill it. But you don't have to be most people. By understanding the psychological mechanisms behind silence as dominance, cognitive dissonance, emotional cascades, strategic information extraction, you can recognize these tactics when they're used against you. More importantly, you can learn counter tactics from elite negotiators who have mastered the art of silence without being mastered by it. Practice reframing. These are the tools. When you're comfortable with silence, you control the negotiation. When you understand how it weaponizes psychology, you can turn it from a weakness into strength. The most powerful weapon in negotiation isn't what you say, it's what you refuse to say. And now, you know how to wield it. If this resonates, subscribe. Let's talk about another subtle weapon in the arsenal, the strategic apology. Not genuine remorse, no. The calculated, almost surgical apology that accomplishes something entirely different. It's not about making amends, it's about control. Think about the executive who messes up spectacularly, a missed deadline, a failed product launch, a disastrous acquisition, then delivers a perfectly crafted public apology. It's swift, it's thorough, it sounds remarkably sincere, and then nothing changes. No real accountability, no consequences. No consequences, just an apology. What's happening here? They're playing the psychology of absolution. Most people hear, "I'm sorry," and they subconsciously think the matter is closed. The emotional weight of the transgression lifts. The offender gets credit for taking responsibility without actually having to take any. It's a cognitive shortcut. Our brains take apology equals resolution equals we can move on. The offender knows this. They count on it. The apology isn't meant to repair the damage. It's meant to paper over it, to make you feel like the issue has been dealt with, so you'll stop asking questions, stop demanding real change. The most dangerous apologies are those that come with a carefully constructed narrative. They acknowledge just enough fault to seem authentic, but frame it in a way that actually shifts blame. I apologize if my actions caused confusion. Notice that if? That's a qualifier. It's not an admission of causing harm, but an acknowledgement that harm was perceived. Then there's the redirect. My intentions were pure, but perhaps my communication wasn't clear. See what's happening here? The apology becomes a lesson in communication, not a reckoning with poor outcomes. The focus shifts from what they did to how others interpreted it. Brilliant and insidious. Now consider the apology that comes with conditions. I apologize, but only if you acknowledge that your reactions contributed to the problem. This isn't an apology, it's a negotiation tactic disguised as remorse. It puts the burden on the other person to accept the apology on their terms, which often means accepting some portion of the blame. It's a power play. The offender maintains control by dictating the terms of resolution. They get absolution while still casting doubt on the legitimacy of the other person's feelings or concerns. What's the counter? Simple. Don't accept the substitute. Real accountability doesn't come with conditions. It doesn't shift blame. It doesn't focus on perception over reality. When you receive a strategic apology, your first question shouldn't be, do I accept this? But what changes? Because that's the only thing that matters. Action. Consequences. Follow through. The apology is irrelevant without it. You're not looking for emotional resolution. You're looking for structural change. Anything less is just another form of manipulation. Let's turn to another favorite tactic, manufactured scarcity, not real scarcity. We're talking about artificial limitations created to trigger primal responses. The limited edition product, the exclusive access, the only 3 spots left offer. These aren't just marketing tricks, they're deliberate psychological manipulations. They tap directly into our fear of missing out, that ancient anxiety that if we don't act now, we'll be left behind while others get what they want. It's evolutionary hardwired. The scarcity activates the same neural pathways as actual danger. The stress response kicks in. When we're told something is rare or limited, our brain doesn't make rational cost-benefit analyses. It makes snap judgments based on perceived opportunity. We're not thinking, is this worth the price? We're thinking, I can't let this get away. The perceived value skyrockets not because the item is objectively better, but because the opportunity to acquire it feels vanishingly small. The most sophisticated practitioners of manufactured scarcity understand the importance of believable constraints. It's not enough to say limited quantities. The constraint must feel organic. The only 3 spots left needs to be tied to a logical reason: venue capacity, instructor availability, exclusive partnerships. The more believable the constraint, the more powerful the psychological effect. If it feels arbitrary, we're skeptical. If it feels constrained by external forces, we're hooked. Then there's the false urgency component. Not just scarcity, but time pressure. Sale ends tonight. Prices go up at midnight. These deadlines create a double bind: act now under pressure or risk losing the opportunity entirely. The anxiety created by time pressure overrides.